We are live. Welcome to Crypto Law TV. I'm John Deaton, the founder and your host. Are we reaching a turning point on the war against crypto? And is it a war? Because 4 minutes ago, the prediction that Crypto Law and I made a long time ago was that they're coming for the exchanges, they're coming for everyone, and Justin Sun just got sued by the SEC as well. But this turning point that I'm talking about, it doesn't happen until we get someone else other than the SEC and Gary Gensler with authority to speak. And now we're getting that. I said that the war on crypto will be won in the courtroom. And that's where it's going to be fought, and that's where it's going to be won, because the SEC and Gary Gensler may not have a faithful allegiance to the law. They can ignore 80 years of case law, but you know who won't? Judges won't. They will have a faithful allegiance, and they're not going to do the same thing. Now, every court battle that we've seen, every single one, has proved an injury, not a fatal injury, but an injury to the SEC's credibility, which will lead to an injury in its ultimate authority in this war. Legitimate crypto is going to win. Look at what I mean. The LBRY hearing, the SEC wanted it to be completely vague. They wanted the ruling to apply to secondary market sales. We go in there, we fight, we make our argument, we bring the facts, we bring the law, and the judge said he will make sure that his decision states that it does not apply to secondary market users, secondary market sales. And he is critical of the SEC and frustrated. And you're going to see that when you read his opinion, hopefully, and when you read the transcript. There's an injury. The Ripple case, Judge Netburn, quote, the SEC lawyers are hypocrites and they lack a faithful allegiance to the law. And then you have Judge Torres saying, you know what? I'm not going to let you to bring this expert in who's going to do what I call swag. That's scientific wild ass guesses and just say, oh, I know what the minds of the XRP holders were when they purchased XRP. Although I haven't interviewed a single XRP holder in the world, let me tell you, the judge said, no, you're not going to say that because I'm not going to allow it. Grayscale, right? The judge is saying to the SEC attorneys, you don't make any sense. Everything you said about a futures Bitcoin ETF equally applies to a spot Bitcoin ETF. And then they argued, and the judges said, but you haven't claimed that Grayscale's analysis is wrong or inappropriate. You just want us to not do it because you don't want us to do it. And I think we're going to see, I predicted Grayscale will win. We'll see if that comes true. And then finally, just recently, the Voyager case and the judge taking the SEC to battle. Each one of these, there's another injury in the battle to the SEC. And some of you think, well, what's this got to do with Ripple? What's this got to do if I'm an XRP holder? Why did Ripple file supplemental briefs, right? They filed a supplemental authority, a letter to the judge that says, we want you to be aware of something. And Ripple has done that twice very recently. Okay, for some of you that don't know, all it is when all the briefs are written and there's no more oral arguments and you're waiting on a decision from the judge. Supplemental authority is when a party like Ripple writes a letter that says, Judge, please be aware that this decision just came down and this is what the judge said because it's relevant to the issues that you're deciding right now. Ripple did that twice. And I'm going to talk about both of them briefly. The first one was the Voyager case. And what happened? The judge rebuked the SEC for being vague. The SEC wanted to come into their court and say, we object to the sale. We do not believe, Judge, you should authorize this sale in this bankruptcy court because we believe that the VGX token has characteristics of a security. We think it might be a security. And the judge said, well, tell me about why. And they said to the judge, well, we'll tell you, but we want it to be in private. And the judge wouldn't have that. You're a public agency funded by the U.S. taxpayer. Whatever you have to say, why can't you say it in open court? The judge wouldn't allow that. Okay. And the judge said, no way. say it in court, but the SEC refused. They offered no guidance to what Voyager had to prove. They wanted Voyager to prove that the token was not a security. And the judge said, that's not how it works. You are an enforcement agency. You need to prove it. And they could offer no proof. And the judge rejected the idea. What he said is, quote, reject the idea that these debtors are supposed to figure out for themselves just what aspects of a VGX token might possibly be considered to be aspects of a security. The judge pointed this out to him. Now, does that sound familiar? What is the defense in the Ripple case? Ripple has highlighted the vagueness of the SEC. The judge, Ripple has said the same things, that how can I, Chris Larson, Brad Garlinghouse, Ripple, know what the law is if you won't tell us what the law is? And on top of that, you can't figure out the law yourself. In fact, the judge in the Voyager case said, quote, crypto companies operate in a regulatory environment best described as, quote, highly uncertain. He said regulators themselves can't agree on whether crypto is a commodity governed by the CFTC or a security governed by the SEC. He said they can't even make up their mind what criteria you use to determine which agency should be the one that governs the tokens. And so how does that apply? Well, the same thing that Ripple was arguing, right? How can you say XRP is a security when SEC enforcement lawyers could own it all the way up to 2019? How could you say that XRP is a security when Hinman said that if it's sufficiently decentralized, the prior initial sales or ICO doesn't matter? And you believe that XRP is sufficiently decentralized. How do you know where the law is? And that's what happens. And so he took the SEC to task, and that helps Judge Torres if she feels the same. Imagine Judge Torres agreeing with Judge Netburn that there's a lack of faithful allegiance to the law and that the SEC lawyers are hypocrites. Well, the judge, here's another court and another court taking the SEC to task, and it gives another judge confidence that she's doing the right thing as well. Now, I promised you all in a tweet, I teased you and said that I was going to share something with you, connect some dots for you people out there that no one else has done. And I'm going to go back to Ripple's first supplemental authority letter. That was involving the U.S. Supreme Court in the Bittner versus United States. And Justice Gorsuch, joined by Justice Jackson, elaborated on fair notice and the fair notice defense. And Justice Gorsuch said that the government must provide, quote, fair notice of what conduct is prohibited, that due process under our Constitution requires the government to put you on notice of what conduct is prohibited and unlawful. The government must prove to a common man a fair warning in common language of what is not allowed. Same exact thing in the Ripple case. Now, what's the dot that I'm connecting? Do you know who Justice Gorsuch is? Do you know what law firm Justice Gorsuch comes from? That's right. Justice Gorsuch, before being on the U.S. Supreme Court, worked at the law firm hired by Ripple. Michael Kellogg is the founding partner and is the main attorney that was responsible for Ripple's appellate brief, their district court brief that I call an appellate ready brief. Michael Kellogg, who used to be Neil Gorsuch's partner and possibly boss because he's the managing partner, wrote about fair notice. And now Neil Gorsuch at the Supreme Court is writing about fair notice. How about that? Now you understand why I say to you, as this case gets up to the appellate court, Ripple's chances get way better, not because of those connections, but because it's the law, and the law should be what wins. And the SEC's best chance is at this level of the court. And so when you look at the argument in that Supreme Court case was that the prior guidance given by the government does not match the enforcement action. So what prior actions do we have in the Ripple case? You got the Government Accountability Office in 2014 calling XRP a virtual currency utilized in a decentralized payment system. You got FinCEN in 2015 saying XRP is virtual currency. You've got FSOC in 2019 saying XRP is virtual currency. You got the SEC approving the MoneyGram purchase and use of XRP in 2019. It goes on. And the Hinman speech, of course, in 2018. And now, is this enforcement action inconsistent with that prior guidance? That's what Neil Gorsuch was talking about. That's what Ripple's talking about. And that's why I'm confident if this goes up, Ripple's going to win, the SEC is going to lose. Now, with that said, I want to turn to bringing on my guest. I have a special guest today, and that is no other than what I called crypto's #1 journalist, and that is Eleanor Tarrett. Hey, Ellie.
Hey, John. That's so nice of you. Thank you so much. I just saw you tweeted that, so I appreciate that and you.
All right. Well, why don't you tell us that you've reported. Well, let me ask you this. Let's first start with your new piece. You just wrote an article out, and I want people to be aware of that, to read it, because I read it and it's great. Tell us about it.
Thank you. Thanks. So I figured this is probably maybe one of the last times and one of the last articles I'll write about the case before Judge Torres makes her decision on summary judgment. Maybe we could get a decision on, any time now, really. According to Stu Alderati, who's Ripple's GC, it could come as soon as the end of the month. It's April 1st next week, which is literally mind-blowing to me. I don't know where this year is going. But if we do see a decision, it couldn't come, I think, at a more crazy time, right? And that was also kind of the inspiration for me writing this piece when I did, because I wanted to think of, basically a decision either way, right, will be significant. If she sides with Ripple, if she sides with the SEC, or if it goes to trial, there are implications for all three scenarios. I think we can all agree on that. A Ripple win would obviously be huge for the industry, because it would be a very serious setback for Gary Gensler and his regulatory crackdown. If the SEC wins, that means he's basically got carte blanche to do whatever he wants with the industry. More enforcement actions likely coming, everything classified as securities. And if it goes to trial, then we're going to have another delay in kind of getting this regulatory clarity that the industry really needs right now. So those are the three scenarios. And I know you, John, you can kind of talk more about which, if some bits might go to trial, she might come back with a ruling on certain things, and then, other things might have to go before a jury. What do you think? What's your opinion?
I've said for a long time that I think that the chances of a jury trial have been grossly underestimated by a lot of people. I'm very confident, and I've said it on record, I'll say it again. I believe the SEC will lose. Remember, Charlie and I even have that bet. I believe the SEC will lose its summary judgment motion as it's written. That doesn't mean the judge can't split the baby, and it depends on how aggressive she is on wanting to get into the evidence. But the SEC lost their expert for trying to show that XRP holders would have relied on the efforts of Ripple and that they were induced by Ripple. And there's no expert to say that there's no non-investment use of XRP. And then, of course, you have XRP holders brief, you have Spin the Bits brief, and all the other amicus brief, and you've got 3,500 affidavits from XRP holders saying why we used and purchased XRP. And some of them say for investment, like many people did, and many of them talk about for the particular use and moving money and being paid and all those other things. And so there is an area where the judge could say whether or not XRP was purchased for non-investment reasons is an issue of fact for the jury to decide. She could say, as a matter of law, the SEC has not, that no reasonable jury could conclude there's a common enterprise and fine for Ripple. Or she could say whether or not there's a common enterprise is an issue for a jury. So it really depends. I'm confident that they're going to lose. And I believe that Ripple has the better chance of an outright win than the SEC does. And whether or not she splits the baby and finds some kind of violation here or there versus today, I don't know. We're going to see. But let's get back to you. You've reported extensively on the war on crypto being waged by the government. And now it seems to be moving beyond the SEC into other government agencies. We got the White House coming out recently saying that there's no utility. You got the New York State regulators. You have the FDIC. So you tell us what you're reporting on not just moving away from the SEC into the other government.
Right. So I think what a big story is, and it's not necessarily getting a lot of attention outside of the crypto space, I feel like, in the traditional financial media, but how the State Department of Finance took possession of Signature a few weeks ago, Signature Bank, which was the #2 crypto bank. That's obviously a huge deal for the industry. But I feel like something I didn't quite appreciate that happened until it happened was just how many people actually banked there. I have a friend who is a trader at the New York Stock Exchange. He has his own brokerage. And he told me that most of the traders on the floor bank with Signature. And I thought that was interesting. It wasn't necessarily a bank I was super familiar with in the past. The Trumps banked there. Ivanka Trump was on the board, I believe, a couple of years ago, back in like 2013. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the whole thing. And obviously we saw what Barney Frank said about the bank being solvent. And the whole reason it was closed was to essentially sideline the crypto industry. Whether that's true or not, I don't think we're really going to know necessarily. But then you have to wonder, right? Like, what did regulators know about the bank that they're not sharing with the public? I think the DOJ and the SEC combined are doing an investigation into possible money laundering there, but does that warrant a full-on closure of the bank? Now we're hearing actually something interesting I heard yesterday at the DC blockchain event was that banks are saying that the FDIC is recommending that they put limits on the amount of business that they do with crypto companies, which is pretty alarming if you think about, this government organization is telling banks to limit their business with industry players. And I think that's really, disturbing if it's true. I believe the FDIC has said that they're not doing that, but according to the banks, they are. And I think the telling part of what we saw yesterday with the Signature stuff is that the buyer didn't take any of the crypto stuff, right? They left over $4 billion of crypto deposits on the table, and the Signet arm of it as well. So that's really telling. Yeah, it's crazy time.
Did anyone give an example or reason? They say, okay, well, it's not because of crypto, but the buyer isn't allowed. They must divest all crypto deposits or assets. I mean, how do they reconcile saying that, it has nothing to do with crypto, but the buyer's not allowed, if you're going to be approved by purchasing Signature, you must divest any claim to the crypto assets or assets related or deposits related to crypto companies? How are they going to reconcile that? Because to me, I'm a common, regular person. I just look at common sense. To me, that is complete validation that it had everything to do with crypto.
Right. And the fact that they're basically cutting off this important part of the financial sector, for what reason, right? What's the motive at the end of the day? And how kind of coordinated is it, right? Because we see the White House coming in now with their economic report yesterday. We've obviously seen everything with the SEC. The New York State financial regulator has brought some enforcement actions in the last couple of months. So it does feel like a sort of a coordinated attack, maybe from all sides. Don't you feel that way?
Yeah, no, I think Nick Carter talked about it, in Choke Point 2.0. I think
Choke Point 2.0. That was a big theme.
100% on point. I think that theory that some, I'm the king of being called a conspiracy theorist. And when Nick, wrote his article, all of a sudden they called him a conspiracy theorist. And I know that his theories have all been validated and proven to be correct. Did this cap that they're saying, is it on a percentage? Is it when they're saying to these banks, you have to cap your crypto investments? Are they talking about deposits? Like you can only keep a certain amount of money?
I believe that's how they're doing it. Yes, with deposits. So And
Can
it's
you imagine? I just want people to think about that. You're a bank, and what do you do as a bank? You take deposits, and you have the federal government, an arm of the United States federal government, which is supposed to be the world's leader on freedom and democracy and free markets. And you have an arm of the United States government telling a bank that you can't take a certain amount of deposits. I mean, we live in the world of bizarro nowadays, it seems to me.
I know. And I'm starting to think that pretty much everything is possible. And I think I tweeted that maybe a few months ago. I said, I'm learning and more not to be surprised by anything in this industry.
All right. Well, I got to tell you something. I know that before the election, before the midterm, you had, congressmen that I'm, favorable towards, the Warren Davidsons, the Tom Emmers, French, Hill, all of these folks. Uh-oh, we may have lost Ellie. You still with us, Ellie? Nothing like live TV. The point that I'm going to get at, in case Ellie doesn't make it back, so that the audience stay with me for a second, is we all are wanting, the question I'm going to ask Ellie, and she'll have to, tweet it out if she doesn't come back, is we heard about a new day coming. And all of us who have been fighting the government, who've been fighting this overreach, this unconstitutional land grab that Gary Gensler is involved in, we keep hearing about the new day. And man, are we waiting for that new day to come? And the question I was going to pose to her is that we've heard that Gary Gensler is being requested to be before the hearings, but it never seems like he shows up. The last hearing, he sent the director of enforcement, right? And so my question, welcome back, Ellie. My question, what'd you say?
I said, sorry, I was on my laptop and then it died.
Oh, no, that's fine. Listen, what I was getting is that we've all heard about the new day coming and that Gary Gensler is going to be held responsible. And we know that House Republicans are trying to get him to testify. Okay. And what's the latest on that? Are they going to get the man to sit before congressional oversight and answer questions or not?
I think he's going to really have to come in and talk soon. I think we've seen this from the House Republicans, right? They're very antsy. I think it was Ranking Member Scott who said a couple of crypto hearings ago, Gary Gensler is more interested in his TV appearances than his Hill appearances, which is quite a diss, I thought. But yeah, so I reported yesterday that he is potentially going to appear next week in front of the House Appropriations Committee. That's a little bit different. So that's not like him going in front of the House Financial Services Committee or the Senate Banking Committee. This is for him to justify the budget, which he just proposed, the $2.4 billion budget. He wants to fund the SEC and all of his agenda and his rulemaking for next year. So that would be what next week is if he agrees. I heard he still might not do it. They might have to postpone it, but that is not because of a reluctance to appear, I'm told. I think it's a scheduling thing. Anyway, for his oversight appearances, yes. I mean, he's hasn't appeared for an oversight hearing, for a House Financial Services anyway, since 2021. And he needs to explain, I think, a lot of things, obviously, on his rulemaking agenda. It's very extensive. We know he's trying to push through the ESG stuff, the climate change, which I think is, it's very, very, very contentious. He's going to have to come in by his own volition, if he feels like, maybe, it's time to come in and talk. Or it's funny, right? Because that's his come in and talk, but he actually won't come in and talk to the oversight committee, or they subpoena him. I'm not sure, whether that's on their minds right now, but we'll have to see. I think we'll see him soon, though. I can't imagine.
I got to tell you, I know for a fact that I speak for so many people when I say that we are so frustrated that you have a congressional oversight hearing, you have senators on the banking committee, you have House of Representatives and Congress, and there's no damn oversight ever done, because it seems like this guy he treats it like an invite to a birthday party, and then he has a choice. I'm not going to go to that one. Oh, the Democrats are in charge now. I'll go to that one. Oh, Elizabeth Warren's going to send me the questions and the answers, and I'll go to that one. But where I just never see, you're the chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission of the United States. Sit down and answer some goddamn questions. Justify your $2.4 billion. Justify your existence. Justify that you're protecting people. Justify that you're doing things for capital formation. It's frustrating, and I know my frustration is very in line with a lot of people out there, because we've never seen a guy that just ignore the oversight. And so, listen, people don't hear me bitch, but let me ask you something before we wrap up. You were at the DC Blockchain Summit. I know that the Paris Blockchain Summit was also happening. Much of the industry's there. You were there. You spoke. You interviewed people, talked to people. I know probably some of it off the record. They had what was the overall feeling that you could report on in the industry? Is it doom and gloom, or is it optimistic? Or you tell us.
Yeah, surprisingly for what's going on in the industry right now, I feel like it is surprisingly optimistic. Everybody at that conference yesterday was happy. We're happy to see friends, we're fellow industry friends, fellow industry professionals. I think people are really, they're encouraged by this industry so much over the last couple of years. How people are very much for crypto. We crypto Twitter. They're encouraged the fact that it's not going away, right? It's this technology that's here to stay. It's getting bashed, it's getting beaten, and blows from every angle from government, but they're still here. They're still running companies. They're still employing people, hiring people. I think that's an encouraging factor, and just kind of they feel like they're like in this corner and they have a lot of support. It's kind of the vibe I was getting. So definitely a lot of optimism. There's new projects coming all the time. People trying to come up with cool new ideas to solve problems. So that's not going away. That's here to stay. But there were some cool people there yesterday. There was one thing that stood out to me the most, I think, was that the three of the 5 CFTC commissioners were there, and they were on stage, and I think that really says something, that an industry regulator, because the CFTC wants to regulate crypto as much as the SEC does, and these commissioners are there and they're making the connections there. They're talking. They're interested. As far as I know, and I'm pretty sure I'm 100% right on this, no one from the SEC was there. So what does that say about this regulator that wants all this skin in the game for crypto, right? But doesn't take the time to show up and engage and understand kind of what the industry is doing, what the industry is doing to make the world better. It was very, very telling, at least to me. That's kind of what I saw. And then, there were other great speakers there. Nick Carter, who you mentioned, he did a great panel on proof of reserves. There were some congressmen. They were remote, though. It was Tom Emmer, French Hill, and Pete Sessions. They actually are all at a GOP retreat in Florida. So they spoke, but it was via Zoom. But what they had to say was very insightful. Tom Emmer kind of made this. He opened the event, and he kind of just made the point that with crypto, it's like it's a mission to protect freedom, right? Freedom in the financial markets, freedom for everyday investors, and he said it's basically being attacked. He's like, those freedoms, those rights are being attacked, and this is a man who's in Congress every single day of his life. He knows what's going on. He knows what is at stake here. So he kind of set that tone. And I thought the way he said, we're fighting, we're not going to let this happen. We're going to be there with you, and we're going to, solve this no matter what it takes, was very uplifting. It was a great event. I'm really happy I went. I'm looking forward to Consensus, which I don't know. Are you going to Consensus, John? I know you were there last year.
Yeah, I should be there.
Yeah.
It depends. I'm hoping I might be somewhere else related to the XRP stuff, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, but like I had this conversation yesterday. Like it's crypto conference season, right? So you've got pretty much anything you could possibly wish for happening on any given week now. So it's an exciting time. But it's what better time to have these conferences, because there's so much to talk about. There's so many great things to discuss, and not so great things, but you know.
All right, I got two final questions for you, and then I got to wrap up. One is, do you think you can ever get one of these SEC folks to come on record? You know me, I've been pretty vocal against the SEC, whether it be Clayton, whether it be Hinman, whether it be Gensler. And it seems to me none of them, that they hide behind the, oh, I can never talk about a case, or I can never talk about this. Are any of them ever going to come? Because I know you talk to people, offline, off record and stuff like that. Are they ever going to come on camera and justify and answer questions to the media? Like you, not going on, CNBC and being offered softballs with no follow-up, but a real interview.
I don't think so. And
Okay.
Unfortunately, it is sad to say that, and it must be sad to hear that, but it doesn't seem like it. And even I know that because even people not in the agency anymore, people who have left, people who there's like a culture of fear almost. I feel like you talk to former SEC and they're like, oh, like
Fear of the truth, Ellie. That's what they're scared of.
Yeah.
Fear of the truth. Let's just make sure the record's clear. I'll be the one to say it. They're scared of the truth. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
I think you just I think you hit the nail on the head. But
well, let me just ask you. The last thing I was going to ask you is, do you think do you think it's going to get worse before it gets better, or do you think that we've seen the worst as far as the war against crypto?
Yes, I do think it's going to get worse. I think until we get some kind of result from Ripple, whatever that may be, I think we're going to be continuing to exist in a void, or the crypto space is going to continue to exist in a void. I'm covering it, so it's never a dull day for me. Thankfully, I love my job. I love covering this industry. But yes, I do think that we haven't seen the last of it, for sure. And, buckle up. But, we have each other. Like I said before, everybody's great in this industry and very supportive. And,
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up. You tell Charlie I'm looking forward to my steak dinner.
Ooh, I will.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. That's it for tonight. Everyone have a great night.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Ellie.